Wednesday evening. It is the first Wednesday evening of the new quarter, and so we'll be starting new Bible classes. Our ladies' class will resume tonight in the fellowship room, and they'll be talking about the Psalms. And we're going to be studying the book of Esther. Drew Binkley will be leading our class here in the auditorium. Men's discussion class will start as well. James Reddick be teaching that course, and that's in the other building, in the Ed building. And then do want to ask for the youth group. stay put in here tonight, and you'll start your class next week. So you can stay in here for the introduction to Esther this evening, and then next week your class will start over in the Ed building. Okay. Just some folks we need to be praying for. Mickey Yost had ear surgery today to correct an inner ear issue that he was having, and he's home and doing fairly well. So we're happy about that. Does not have a report yet back on that. Yeah, but yeah, the surgeon went right on to the next surgery. So let's keep Mickey in prayers. But we're glad he was well enough to come home. Juanita Bullard tomorrow will go into the hospital for a pancreatic biopsy, and so that's tomorrow. That's supposed to be an outpatient procedure. So let's keep her in prayers. Mark Nicholas, we just announced, is being seen about a mitral valve issue that he's had in the past, and so let's keep him in prayers. Let's not forget that that we've been praying for Jonathan Woolard, and he's been in the hospital with a mitral valve issue. I think he went home yesterday. That was the plan, but I didn't get that confirmed. But let's keep praying for Jonathan Woolard. So we don't want to remind you of that. Well, congratulations are in order to Megan and Matthew White at the birth of their new son, Jude Michael, who was born today, 12:22 p.m., weighed 7 pounds, 3 ounces. I saw a picture of him stretched out, and he's about like that. So anyway, we're so very happy that everything went well and that he's doing fine. And we look forward to seeing him here at worship in just a few weeks. So many other people to be praying for. There's a long list on your announcements from tonight. Let's be looking at that. So many people fighting cancer and with other issues. So and also other expectant mothers. Just some upcoming events. This coming Saturday, 10:30 a.m., Secret Sister Ministry will have a kickoff brunch here at the building. All ladies are invited to participate. Breakfast will be provided. There will be evangelism workshop in the Ed building this coming Saturday, 8 a.m. to noon, and Ray Hawkins will be conducting this. Wedding shower on Sunday, 4 p.m., honoring Masha Zhivitova and Gary Weasel. That's for men and women to attend, and there are more details on your announcements about that event. September 16th, we're going to be having an evangelism seminar. That's 9 a.m. to noon, and I'll be leading that. Also, our English-Spanish ladies class and brunch is also on that day. That's in the Ed building. So there are a lot of other events upcoming. Youth group devotional on the 17th. We'll be starting Monday night for the Master again this month. We're hosting the area-wide Spanish-speaking service Sunday night, the 24th. That starts at 5 o'clock. That's a change of time from our normal time, but it's when we started last year as well. Congregational retreat at the end of the month and other events. So look at your announcements for more information. At this time, Mike Coots will be leading us in a couple of songs. We'll have a prayer, then we'll be dismissed to our Bible classes. Let's lift our voices together, sing praise to God. Mike?
Good evening. If you'd like to follow along in the book, the first one will be 528. Praise God, from all that seems slow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him above, ye heavenly hosts. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Next will be song 949. I will enter his gates with thanksgiving in my heart. I will enter his courts with praise. I will say, this is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice, for he has made me glad. He has made me glad. He has made me glad. I will rejoice, for he has made me glad. He has made me glad. He has made me glad. I will rejoice, for he has made me glad. And we'll have one more song this evening. 971, Restore My Spirit. Restore my spirit, Lord, I need restored. My heart is weary, please fill it, dear Lord. I stand in need of more strength from your word. Renew my love, rebuild my faith, oh, restore my soul. Revive the fire, Lord, deep in my soul. Stir my desire to work in your fold. Light in my heart, dear God, your zeal grown cold. Renew my love, rebuild my faith, oh, restore my soul. Renew my courage, Lord, it needs restored. My cup is empty, refill it, dear Lord. Replace all doubts and fear with faith so bold. Renew my love, rebuild my faith, oh, restore my soul.
Let's pray together. Dear God, thank you for this day that you've given us and this evening that you've given us to come here together and to worship you and to study your word. Please be with the teachers this evening as they teach your word to the kids and to the adults here who are here to listen and learn. Please be with those who are sick. Let them get better. Be with those who have cancer. Comfort them. Let them get the treatments that they need. Be with those who are their support. Please be with us this evening as we go into the rest of this week. In Jesus' name, amen.
Okay. There it is. Okay. There it isn't. Okay. All right. Well, good evening. This is Old Testament 102. I am the... Wait, no, that's not right. We're studying the book of Esther this quarter. And as per usual, Barry sought out someone to teach the book of Esther, and I, fool that I am, decided, yeah, I can do that. So we've got, so we're going to be talking about the book of Esther and just everything to do with Esther, the story, what we know about the story, and maybe a little bit of what we don't know. Now, me and my brain, I like to plan things out a little bit, and in my mind, there are 10 chapters of Esther. There are 13 weeks in the quarter. There's 1 week we're setting aside for Thanksgiving. So, it's 12 weeks, one chapter a week, and we have one at the beginning and one at the end for beginnings and for wrapping up whatever we forgot. So, today, we are going to be talking about Esther, but we are not going to be talking about Esther, if that makes sense. We're going to be talking about the book kind of on a broader sense, kind of stepping out of the word and seeing what we know about the book. Because the book of Esther in and of itself is fascinating. It's interesting how we got it. It's interesting how it is relevant. It's interesting in the way that this book is different than almost any other book that we have in the Bible. And so we're just going to talk a little bit about that, give us a little bit of background, a little bit of history, a little bit of sort of this understanding of how we got to what we have, and then starting next week, we'll start with chapter 1. So, whenever you're reading something, if you're studying in the AP courses, or if you've studied any college courses, you might run across what we call a DBQ, a document-based question. That's when the testing board or the professor or whoever gives you a text, and he wants to know, all right, what is it about this text? What can we infer from what we've read here? So you normally start with the journalistic questions, the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, and the how, right? So let's start with something relatively simple. Esther. Who wrote Esther? Does anybody know? I'm genuinely asking because we really don't know. We don't have an idea of who wrote Esther. Certain traditions have it, and if you want to start a tally on how many times I say certain traditions, that's strike one on certain traditions, so we'll keep a running tally and let me know at the end. Certain traditions have it that Esther was written by Mordecai, one of the characters that we will meet in the book, one of the main characters of the book. But that's not entirely attested. There's no, it's not like the epistles. It's not like the letters that we have in the New Testament, where the New Testament epistles start with, I, Paul, am writing to you, the church in Ephesus. Greetings. We don't really have that with Esther. There's no, I, Mordecai, son of Jair, am writing this to you, the people. We don't get that. We don't know, okay, so that's the who. Who, we don't know. All right, so let's try when. That's another good, relatively easy question. When was the book of Esther written? Yes? 2nd century BCE. That's a good round ballpark figure. Certain traditions, another tally, have it in the 2nd century. Other traditions have it a little bit earlier. Other traditions have it a little bit later. Again, we're not sure. You're going to hear me say that a lot as well. We don't know when the book of Esther was written, but we do know a few things. We do know a few concrete details that can help us pin down when Esther was written, or ballpark it, if you will. We know it is definitely a part of the Jewish canon of Old Testament books. Tradition has it, another tally, that tradition has it that the canon of the New Testament started sometime, canon of the Old Testament was closed sometime around the Second Temple period. So you want to think from the 2nd century back to as early as the 3rd century BCE, possibly as late as the 1st century AD. We know that it's a part of the Septuagint. Now, just a quick refresher here. How many have heard the word Septuagint before? Okay, how many know what the Septuagint is? Okay, the Septuagint is our first real translation of the Hebrew Bible into another language in a formal setting. It's the translation of the Hebrew Bible from Hebrew or Aramaic into Greek. It's one of the Ptolemies, Ptolemy II, decides, hey, I want to know, Ptolemy II decides, hey, I want a repository of all knowledge in the known world. I will build a library in Alexandria, and I want a copy of every book in the known world. Hey, Hebrew people, what's this? Well, this is our Bible. This is our book. I can't read that. Can you translate it for me? And so 70 or 72 scholars translate the book of the Hebrew Bible from Hebrew into Greek. And that is, well, how we get the first translation of the Bible. That's how we get the Septuagint. With me so far? Okay. Esther is in the Septuagint, but it's not the Esther that we have in the modern day. It's a little weird. Esther in the Septuagint is longer by 2, possibly 3 whole chapters. There are 3 chapters in the Greek that aren't present in the Hebrew scroll. It's a little bit strange, but it kind of, it comes out in the wash. I'll say that, it comes out in the wash. Scholars today will use the Hebrew text of Esther, and we'll talk more about that in a second, the Hebrew text of Esther as the main text of Esther. But they will use the Greek form of Esther, the longer form of Esther, as supplemental materials, as informative to the text, not necessarily germane to the text, not necessarily needed to understand Esther, but it's there to help us understand Esther. Okay, so Esther comes to us sometime between 3rd, 4th century, 2nd century BC. It's definitely written it's definitely written sometime during the Persian or Greek empires of the region. Okay? All right, so that covers the who, we don't know, the when, we're not sure, why. And this is going to be the most important question of the quarter. Why do we have Esther? Why is Esther in our Bible now? To explain Purim. That's a good, nice round. What? That's a good Jewish answer, yes. It is there to explain Purim. And that's not a bad answer, Barry. That is definitely there. Why do we need Purim explained to us? Because it was a national holiday. It's a, what? Mm-hmm.
The whole purpose of the attack made on God's people was to wipe them all out. They had to defend themselves all over Persian Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And that event happened in between rebuilding the temple and rebuilding the walls.
Mm-hmm.
So it's at a critical time, and Jerusalem's going to reestablish. That has to
Right.
happen.
Right, exactly. There's an existential threat to the Jewish people during this time. And we'll read in Esther that this existential threat is not just for the Jewish people in captivity. It's not just against the Jewish people that are still in the homeland. It's not against the Jewish people that have gone back. It's for all Jewish people in the Persian Empire. And we'll talk a little bit about that, of just how big of a threat that is later on. Okay, who, what, when, why. Okay, what? What is Esther? What essentially is the book of Esther? History, literature, yes. Says, she saved the people, and that is the purpose of the book. It's good. Yes. Right. Right. Okay. We are being obedient to God. He may put us in situations we don't know about when it's happening, but when you look back on it, it makes total sense. Yes. Yes. Exactly. And you touched on something very important to this whole thing. And this kind of goes into a little bit of a tangent that I had on to kind of how we got Esther. I mentioned that it's a part of the Hebrew canon, and I mentioned that it was a part of the Septuagint. But the name of God, the YHWH, the Yahweh, in your English translations, it'll be capital L, little capital O, little capital R. The Lord, the name of the Lord, is not in the book of Esther. It is not written in the name, it is not written in the text. That has caused some confusion, and that has caused some anxiety for translators, commentators, and speculators about Esther throughout the decades, throughout the centuries, throughout the millennia. Here's what I mean. The book of Esther, to date, from 1947 to modern day, the book of Esther, no fragments, no scrolls, no texts, no portions have been found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. Because the authors of the Dead Sea Scrolls, likely, tradition holds, that they were a part of a separate sect of Judaism, and that particular sect did not view the book of Esther as a part of their canon. Martin Luther, fast forwarding to the 1500s, Martin Luther, when he's translating the Bible from Hebrew into German, one of the first translation of the Bible into German, he omits the book of Esther because he believes that without the name of God, the book of Esther has no purpose in the canon. And we're definitely going to talk about that a lot through our class here. But Let me say first and foremost, on the first day that I'm ever doing this, Martin Luther was wrong. Just because the name of God is not found in Esther, just because the name is not seen in the text, does not mean that God is not present in the text. It does not mean that God is not appearing in the text. Yes?
Remember all the book of Esther, but like one of my favorite works was like about the one about keeping silent, and then
Yep.
they said God will eventually find somebody to do the work if you don't do it. So I don't know if that part mentioned God.
No.
I'm not sure.
So that's a good point. There is a portion in Esther, it's brought up, I know it's brought up in the VeggieTales version. I know it's brought up in some of the 1950s Richard Burton versions, the 1980s versions. The Book of Esther has been transliterated and put on screen, put on stage so many times. I think there might be an opera. I know Sight and Sound did a musical. I know there's hundreds of visual representations. Like I said, there's a VeggieTales version out there. A lot of them do have that. The idea of if you do not do this, God will have someone else do it. That line, I'm not sure, I'm going to reread. I've been reading so much that my eyes have gone kind of cross-eyed on this one a little bit, so forgive me for a moment. I think that might be a part of the text that's in the Septuagint, but not the Hebrew. Yes, Barry. Yeah. 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 Yep. Well, Esther's not a Hebrew name either. Hadassah is. Hadassah, I had this conversation with the family. Hadassah is a Jewish name. Hadassah is Esther's Jewish name. It means myrtle. But Esther is a Persian name. It's a very Persian name. It's a reworking of the name of Ishtar, or Astarte, or Asherah, or Aphrodite. So Barry was mentioning the name of Mordecai, Marduk. A lot of these names aren't actually Jewish names that we're reading. These are Hebrew names. These are Persian names. This is very much a Persian story, but it is still very much a Jewish story as well. We'll see that coming out. The characters might have these names of Persian people, but they are very much in a Jewish story. They are much Hebrew story. Yes?
History of the king, the historical records of the king, record that Esther was his wife.
Aha. Right. Okay, so we're going to spend the whole time on this one, unpacking this one. Question was, does the name of the king, do the annals of the king, does our knowledge of the Persian Empire, forgive me for expanding a little bit if I may, does our outside knowledge of this time period affect our understanding of the Book of Esther? Yes, kind of, and no, kind of. So, we'll bring out the other book I have. Josephus. We have a translation of Josephus in the library. Josephus, one of the one of the best outside perspectives on Jewish literature while still being an insider perspective. He's writing his perspective on Jewish history to the Romans and trying to get them to understand. Now, Josephus actually provides a full-on translation of the Book of Esther, or rather, Cliff Notes version of the Book of Esther. Now, the version he gives is almost certainly the Septuagint version, the Greek version that the Romans at the time, that he writes this. This is late 1st century AD, definitely after 70, after the destruction of the temple. Josephus is writing to a Roman audience, kind of saying, so these people that you guys just defeated and utterly destroyed and scattered to the four winds, let me tell you about those guys. Let me tell you about what they did. Josephus has a full translation in Book 11, Chapter 6. There's a full translation of the Book of Esther, and he says that the king was King Artaxerxes of the Persian Empire. Now, modern scholars have taken a look at this, kind of compared, contrasted, kind of gone back a little bit, and seen the king of Esther as being King Xerxes, the first of the Persian Empire. But some have also said that it's Artaxerxes. Some say Xerxes, some say Artaxerxes. It would fit in a time period. If you read Herodotus, it would fit in at the end, sort of, or fit in somewhere in the middle of Xerxes' life. If you go for the Josephus translation, it fits in perfectly with Artaxerxes' life, but Herodotus, Greeks don't really care about the Persian Empire after they defeat Xerxes. You know, the movie 300, Battle of Thermopylae, Battle of Marathon, Salamis, the Greeks defeat the Persian Empire, they defeat the king Xerxes, he goes back to his palace with his tail between his legs, and that's pretty much all of the history of the Persian Empire that the Greeks care about. We don't really care about that afterwards. In the original Hebrew, the name of the king is King Ahasuerus. In the Greek, they translated it as Artaxerxes. Some modern Hebrew has translated it. Try saying that 5 times fast. Modern Hebrew has it as Xerxes, which is true, which is right. We're not sure. It could be either one. Both fit plausibly. Both fit kind of the same timeline. Both fit kind of the same time period. It would fit plausibly in either case. The Persians, we don't really have their records from this time period, mostly because they go through a lot of internal turmoil. Xerxes, at the end of his life, is assassinated. Artaxerxes, at the end of his life, is assassinated. There's a series of kings that are stabbed. There's a series of kings that are poisoned. There's one king that might actually have been replaced by a wizard. True story. We don't really know about when this time slot fits in. We do know that the name of Mordecai does come up as a trusted advisor in a lot of Persian records from that time period. But like Barry was saying, the name Mordecai was literally a name of Marduk. It'd be like saying John, the trusted advisor. Okay, John, that's good to know. Which John? Oh, you know, John. That's very descriptive, thank you. So yeah. I'm going to have, next week, I'm going to have a list, a comprehensive list of resources that I've been using, of texts, of audiobooks, of podcasts, of the research that I've been doing. I recommend Josephus. Like I said, this is a translation of the Greek. The other one, this I borrowed from our church library. This is a new translation of the Hebrew Bible. Robert Alter is the translator. It's a Jewish author. A new translation came out in the past 5 years or so. So it's got good modern scholarship to it. If you want to know about the Persian Empire, sort of this empire that we're going to talk about, I recommend there's a podcast called Hardcore History. The episode is called King of Kings. I'm going to kind of, we've got a little bit of time. Let's talk about the Persian Empire a little bit, because this will help set up the story that we're going to tell. So what do we know about the Persian Empire? Before we get into the book of Esther, before we get into the story that we have here, what do we know about this world that we're stepping into? Who were the Persians? Anyone at all? Yes. Modern day Iran. Very good.
They were one of the oldest civilizations.
One of the oldest civilizations in that area. Yes. Now, who did the Persians take over? Who did they conquer? Babylonians, Medes. The correct answer would be just about everyone who was anyone at that time. When Esther starts, when the book of Esther starts, it says, these events took place during the days of Ahasuerus, my translation has that, who ruled 127 provinces from India to Kush. When he's talking about India, he's talking about the Indus River Valley, modern-day Pakistan, but at that day, what was known as India. When he says Kush, he means the Nile River, specifically the upper Nile River, down into modern-day Sudan, South Sudan, and into Ethiopia. They had provinces down there. Their northern border is modern-day Russia, Kazakhstan, the Central Asian steppe area, this area that is mostly barbarians, viewed as barbarians at this time. And their eastern border is Greece. They stretch from literally the known world. They stretch from one end where the Greeks live to the other end where the Indian peoples live. And when I say they take over, they do this so quickly, it's almost scary. So, in the Bible, in the book of Daniel, Daniel is taken into Babylonian captivity, and while he is in Babylonian captivity, Babylon falls to the Persians, right? Babylon falls to the Persians. The first true emperor of the Persians is a man named Cyrus the Great. Cyrus the First. Also, the pronunciation might also be Kurash. I like that. Gives it a little more ancient sounding sort of a name. Cyrus the First. He conquers modern day Turkey. He conquers modern day Iraq. He conquers down into modern day Saudi Arabia. He takes over the Babylonian Empire, what all they controlled. And then he passes away in about 20 years after taking over Babylon. And then next is his son, Cambyses, and he takes over all of Egypt down to the farthest cataracts of the Nile. And he does that in about 2 years, and then he dies. And then another person comes to the throne called Darius, or Darius, however you want to pronounce that. And he takes over and he expands the empire even further, taking it down to the Indian subcontinent, to the Indus River, and then he sees over into Greece, and he crosses the Aegean Sea and takes over portions of Greece. He takes over modern-day Thessalonica. He conquers modern-day Bulgaria. He leaves a small force of his army behind and says, "Here, you raid the rest of this. You go up north and raid as far as you can." They pass the Danube River and go up into modern-day Ukraine and come back down to modern-day Iran. And this is all done. The Persian Empire goes from nothing to being the mightiest empire in the world at that time in 60 years. And they'll maintain it for another 200 years. Alexander the Great, the Greek Empire, the Macedonian Empire does it in less time, but they last for much less time. That empire fragments almost as soon as Alexander dies. The Mongolian Empire will conquer 10 times as much, but again, it fragments very soon after the first emperor dies. Rome takes over a similar amount of land area, a little more if you count the Mediterranean Empire, but it takes a long time to do it. The Persian Empire does it fast, does it thoroughly, and has it last for such a long time that, well, just the way that I'm talking about it, modern-day historians and modern-day scholars are still astounded by what they did.
Successful.
What was their weapon that they were so successful? The bow. The bow. So what they did was the Persians basically borrowed the bow that the steppe nomads, that the horse archers would use. They would take the bow, this huge, strong bow, almost as tall as a man. They took the archer off the horse and gave him a bow and had him train so much that he could release an arrow once every minute with a bow my size, drawing back and releasing every minute. If conservative numbers are to be believed, they would have had 20,000 archers in an army. Their archers are so numerous and so deadly and so rapid with their fire that when they go down to conquer the Greeks and they come up to the Spartans, they try to intimidate the Spartans by saying, "If you go up against us, our arrows will blot out the sun." Of course, the Spartans aren't intimidated, and they say, "Okay, then we'll fight in the shade." But, it's another story for another day. The Spartans say, "If you blot out the sun, we'll fight in the shade." Yeah. So, kind of feeding into the question earlier about where does Ahasuerus, where does the king of Esther, where does he fit into this? We can't glean much from outside sources, but that's not very surprising. There's a great phrase that I found in my research that was used. It says, "This time period in history is trying to understand history from modern terms. It's like a black and white film. It's the Thomas Edison train coming into town kind of a film. There's some color to the history. There's some understanding of history. The Bible that we have is very good at helping to understand history, helping to understand what we see there. It's like some of those recolorized movies, like Gone with the Wind or Robin Hood, where it's not quite full on filmed in Technicolor, but it is recolorized to where we can see the color within. And then we come to Herodotus, and it's like Dorothy walking into Oz. Suddenly the black and white comes off, and we're in full color. Herodotus' story ends right before chapter 1 of Esther would be in the narrative. And so it's like suddenly from the story from Herodotus, from the outside color, from all this good history that we have around this time, I just had the strangest dream. And we're doing what we can with what we have, but it's not quite that vivid Technicolor of Herodotus. It's not that interesting notoriety. It's not that interesting understanding. And everyone coming after tries to go back and tries to understand, but there's no outside source that goes back and says, I got this from Esther, or this decree from Mordecai, or I, the son of who served with Haman, or anything like that. So from a historical perspective, we are a little bit lost. But from the story perspective, this is possibly my favorite book of the Bible. From just a pure literature story perspective. Because the Bible has so many different works of, if you step out for a moment, has so many different types of works. It has the book of Genesis, which is very much a soap opera, as just the soap opera of this one family of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all the way from Adam to Joseph. It's like the best family drama there is. Succession, Dynasty, Billions, whatever you want to say. You've got the book of Ruth, which is very much a Jane Austen period piece, very much a personal story, the story of romance and duty. You've got the historical battles. You've got Samuel and Kings and Chronicles, stories about big people doing important things and fighting these big battles. And then you've got Esther, who is one person doing the right thing because she is in the right place at the right time. Yes?
Good example of God working in mysterious ways when it's not obvious to us.
I want you to hold that and say that in every single class that we have, Diane. I want you to say that. It is the story of God working in mysterious ways. That basically is what Esther is.
And so we create this story, but the twist in it is so poignant and so effective.
Yes. There's twists and turns, there's character flaws, there's dramatic irony, there's character irony. This is on the level of what Shakespeare would give us in his histories. This is like Richard III or Henry IV, and
somebody who was trustworthy.
exactly.
Sincerely trustworthy from start to finish.
Exactly.
And you could read a situation and tell her how respond effectively.
Yes.
And that's rare in today's world.
And it's rare in any world. I'll say that. Yes.
In the story, the plot itself tells you a lot about the time, the place, and where. For instance, when the people were where they were displaced, and the Bible talks about like God displacing the Jews, like letting the Jews being conquered, and then they're going to be along. And he talk about the Bible talk about the generations that's going to be displaced, and around the time is going to be displaced. And then Esther had to change her name from Jewish to, more of a, I don't know if it was Greek. Persian, yes. Sorry. You're talking about Persian Empire the whole time. But, okay, so, she had to change her name to Persian. So that gives you a part of where, in history, it happens and exactly what time and place. And then the other thing is talking about like religious, even though like God is not in the name of God is not in the book, but a lot of implication of prayer, of fasting, of ritual of the Jews are in that book, which like tells you a lot about the atmosphere and what it is.
Exactly.
And the work of God.
Exactly. Yes.
A couple things. One is, man, I'm so impressed with just the efficiency of the bureaucracy of the Persians. I really am. When they let the Jews go back and rebuild a temple, they say, here's all your stuff.
Yes.
They didn't even take the stuff. The Babylonians took the stuff.
Exactly.
And here it is, and here's the list, and make sure it all matches up. That's amazing to me. I don't know that our government can do that. Anyway, but throughout all these stories, if Esther really is the last of these narratives to be written, maybe not the last prophetic, but the last of these narratives to be written, all these other narratives, we're told God did this, God did this, God did this. So we're taught, we've been trained to see, this is what God does. So then we're given the story where there is coincidence upon coincidence upon coincidence. We've been trained to see God already. So we know He's there, even though He's not mentioned, which teaches us to do that in our everyday life. That's why it's so important.
Exactly. This is what we call pattern recognition.
Yes, yes.
If the numbers go 1, 2, 3, what's the next number? That's kind of what the Bible has set us up for Esther. Yes.
So it seems very pointed, Daniel and Esther seem very pointed, where much of the Old Testament deals with Jerusalem and that area, what we would consider the Holy Land. But this feels very pointed to the diaspora to say hold fast, because it shows like Mordecai teaching his niece. Like this is very important to carry on these traditions, even though you're so separated from the land. Like it doesn't matter where you are, hold fast. Daniel, he went and he prayed. He made sure that he ate food that when he couldn't keep kosher, he didn't have meat. And he proved that he could thrive without giving in, right? So it's holding fast to these traditions, and God will prevail.
Exactly. There's a lot of parallels, and we'll see them between Esther and Daniel. We'll see them a little bit between Esther and Ezra, and Esther and Nehemiah, and this other diaspora literature. A little bit of Isaiah in there, a little bit of Jeremiah. Tell me that Jeremiah is not pointedly talking at Esther when he says, I know the plans for you, declares the Lord. Tell me that he's not talking directly at Esther in that sentence.
That's a good point.
And we'll see a lot of that as we go in. See a lot of that. So, our class today pretty bare bones, pretty kind of out of the text for a minute. Like I said, we're going to be going into the text starting next week. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I'm going to be trying to use the English Standard Version. It's the version that's in the pews. So if you want to read ahead, try the English Standard Version. If you want to branch out, try another translation and see what they say. We talked about the difficulty of Xerxes versus Artaxerxes versus Ahasuerus versus some other translations have some other king thrown in there for good measure. I came across one commentator who tries to fit the story of Esther into the Babylonian captivity and not the Persian Empire, like 50 or 60 years before. It doesn't work, but it's out there. It's very out there. You could, so I'd suggest, I would recommend, start reading Esther in the English Standard Version and read Esther in whatever version else you happen to have. You don't need to read the English Standard Version, but that's the version that we're going to be using in here. Yeah, I really got through most of what I was going to say ahead of time. Are there any questions, comments, concerns?
An answer to Barry's comment about that the Persian king gave the Jews everything so they could go back and rebuild the temple.
Yeah.
And was that what I wonder if the people were complaining there's too many Jews here, or was it saying, don't forget we're your friends?
A little bit of both. Yeah. A little bit of both. So this is kind of more into Ezra and Nehemiah, but the captives from Judea being returned to Jerusalem, being given back all of their objects for the temple and being given all the stuff for the temple back, that's actually attested by some other groups as well that the Babylonians had taken into captivity. Back in the ancient world, when you took somebody, some people, some city into captivity, what did you take? You took their people, you took their religious items, and you took it all back to the capital. The Persians come in and they say, okay, we just conquered, we just took over all of this. We don't want to keep all our stuff here. Here, go back to Jerusalem, go back to Babylon, go back to Cush, go back to wherever you guys are from, and take the stuff with you. Just don't forget that we are the rulers. In fact, the Persian, the official title of the Persian emperor, the title emperor is a Roman phrase, but in Persian, it was a title meaning the king of the rulers, king of the universal area, or, very biblical phrase here, the king of kings. They were the first emperors. They were the first to be called the king of kings, which is where that title comes from in the prophetic texts. When Jesus is called the King of Kings, by that time, they would be thinking, okay, king of everything. Okay. All right. Thank you all very much. See you all next week.
Oh, how good it is when the family of God dwells together in spirit, in faith and unity, where the bonds of peace, of acceptance and love are the fruit of His presence here among us. So with one voice we'll he dwells in the presence of his people. Oh, how good it is on this journey we share to rejoice with the happy and weep with those who mourn. For the weak find strength, the afflicted find grace when we offer the blessing of belonging. So with one voice we'll sing to the Lord, and with one voice we'll lift out his word till the whole earth sees the Redeemer has come, for he dwells in the presence of his people. Oh, how good it is to embrace his command, to prefer one another, forgive as he forgives. When we live as one, we all share in the love of the Son with the Father and the Spirit. So with one voice we'll sing to the Lord, and with one voice we'll lift out his word till the whole earth sees the Redeemer has come, for he dwells in the presence of his people. So with one voice we'll sing to the Lord, and with one voice we'll lift out his word till the whole earth sees the Redeemer has come, for he dwells in the presence of his people. For he dwells in the presence of his people. The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold. Sweeter also than honey, and the honeycomb. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure,